Somerville musician and first-time political candidate Fleming Moore is running for mayor of Somerville. He sits down one-on-one with me for a special edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And be sure to download the free Quintin's Close-Ups app in your Apple or Google Play stores. Listen to this interview next week on my free Quintin's Close-Ups iHeartRadio podcast. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Fleming Moore, welcome to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Well, thank you.
Yes, sir. Obviously, I'm bringing you on Quintin's Close-Ups because obviously you are a notable Somerville musician. But now you want to take on the task of becoming the next mayor of Somerville.
I don't know if want is the right verb. Willing might be.
Well, you tell me why you want to run for mayor.
Why I'm running for mayor is I believe it's, first of all, people need to understand the role that the mayor plays in the form of government we have. It's called a council form. And in that form of government, the mayor has the same role as a council member. The only difference would be is that he has to get elected throughout all the districts. So I think that position warrants somebody with a different life experience.
What is your experience?
Well, been everything from a roofer to a secondary mathematics teacher to a sexton in a church.
Right.
So I have a diverse set of life skills that I could bring to the table.
As a matter of fact, you told the Somerville General Scene this back in May. You said this quote, "I'm basing this campaign on a mustard seed of faith. I'm going to run it as an art and cultural candidate. They need a fresh set of eyes. We need some diversity." Can I break that down? You said this quote, "I'm basing this campaign on a mustard seed of faith." How much seed do you have now?
How much seed do I have now? Well, what I thought about, the job pays $15,000 a year, Quintin. $15,000 a year. And I thought to myself, a prudent man would not raise more than 10%, which would be $1,500. And then I got to the reality of the situation, so I made a pledge that I would not raise more than $2,500 for the entire campaign. And to date, I'd only raised $240, and I spent $200 getting my name on the ballot today. So I'll be raising a little bit more money, and the way I do that will be through some art my wife helped me design, and some political merchandise, some memorabilia for this campaign, which I think is going to be historic. And the mustard seed of faith is that you have to believe something's going to happen for it to happen, and I believe that the time is right for someone like me to step into that role. And I was born in Somerville.
Yes.
I was baptized in Somerville. I love Somerville. I love the people, and I have an understanding of the political and cultural history of the town, which in my town halls I've heard anything from the fear of development to racial reconciliation, and I just grew up before integration. In second grade was the first year they integrated the schools in Somerville, and I think it might be healthy for us to have a talk about who we are as a town and deal with some issues that before they become troublesome in the future. It's kind of hard to move forward if we don't acknowledge our past. It doesn't mean that we have to blame people. I think a lot of the division that sometimes we see, as I know working in a church, that sometimes you go, how can these good people stand silently? And I think what I've learned through my life experience and all the places I've been is that sometimes we develop scales in our eyes that we can't see others' misfortune, or we can't empathize with people, and or we get so far removed. An example of that would be I was at a infrastructure, basically it was a vision workshop for the next 10 years for Somerville,
right.
And somebody from the Chamber of Commerce, a good person I know well and I admire him. We were talking about the traffic between St. George and Somerville, and he said actually it's gotten better. You can get in your car and get right through there. And I said, what about the people who don't have cars? How do they get through the traffic? And that sometimes I think we forget other people's plight in life. A good example is when they say a rising tide lifts all boats. Well, if you don't have a boat, you drown. And there's people that need our help that aren't being spoken for, and I hope to be the voice for those.
Where will your voice go when it comes to public transportation?
I believe, from what I've seen, is because of the mayor's role. Actually, if a candidate says, I'm going to fix your traffic problems, or I'm going to do this, it doesn't really work that way. But what I would like to see Somerville do is get ahead of the development. We've seen the fiasco last summer with just repaving the rail, Norfolk Southern rails on Remount Road, past Trident Tech,
right,
up towards Somerville.
Right.
Well, if we could get some light rail or get that figured out between Somerville and St. George before Dorchester, the town of Dorchester, becomes the epicenter of the population, which is forecast, they're projected that to be the center of population of the Charleston metropolitan area will be in Dorchester, South Carolina. So it seems to me if we would get out ahead of the curve, get some light rail between Somerville and St. George, that would be the way to go, and let's hope Charleston County gets its act together.
Now, how would you form a relationship with the government officials in Charleston County?
Through different commissions. Chamber of Commerce, there's already relationships developed between those. I'd reach out to whoever gets elected in North Charleston, Goose Creek. There's a mayor's association. If I were elected mayor, I'd have to get on these, join these organizations and form relationships.
Speaking of relationships, a lot of the residents told the Post and Courier this, and this is what the Post and Courier is writing, quote, some residents say they want a mayor who will be focused on maintaining relationships, a leader who can help direct and guide growth by collaborating instead of fighting with people. How many relationships have you been able to maintain when it comes to growth?
I really have not been involved in that. Maintaining relationships requires two people to be mature and to understand that you have to find a way to agree to disagree. And there's people in my lives that I do that with. I don't necessarily, I don't believe African Americans vote monolithically. And when you get in a relationship with people, you have to understand that we all see life through different perspectives, and that our life experience should be respected, and it's mostly through listening that you form relationships.
What are you listening to when it comes to other issues that could perhaps be troublesome to Somerville in the next 5-10 years?
For example, what issues would you think would be troublesome in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, I get to ask the questions.
Well, I mean, that would be that's a pretty, you're talking natural disasters, earthquake. I think some of the issues that we're going to be dealing with will be climate change, to be honest with you. Already the storm water drainage is starting to present itself as a challenge, I would say. There is evidence of rising sea levels, and that's going to affect us, and it is affecting us. If the temperature projections for the middle of the century are what they say they're going to be, it's going to be real hot in 10 years. So we're going to have to start looking at those challenges, and perhaps developers will invest in their developments and provide us with hard surfaces that are water permeable, things like that. Those are probably the most present challenge. In growth, we're not going to stop that, but we can start looking for ways for development to pay for development for the developers to pay for the infrastructure that's needed, the increased pressure that it's putting on our infrastructure.
How much pressure would you put on town council to make certain that happens if you were to be elected?
I don't know that I would be able to put pressure on them. That's all going to depend upon how many votes I would receive. In order for a mayor to have any real power, he has to have enough votes in every district in order to push those councilmen where he would like them to go. But I think really, Somerville is for all the criticism that goes on. We have a strong team of people. What I would like to see is some of those really gifted people that have such a divide between them that they aren't able to work together to somehow bridge that gap. Because if when you're wasting people's gifts because this person can't get along with this person, the idea is to build a team out of that council, and we move together with consensus rather than pressure. I don't believe shaming people gets them to do. I think that's bad politics, to shame people or put pressure. It's just, I can't think of anybody on town council or the people that oppose each other that really don't care about the town. I don't believe that at all. I think some people may be more motivated by profit sometimes, but that's there's nothing illegal about that. Or so I don't know. That's just, I'm just not one to try not to let money rule my heart, in all my endeavors.
How is your heart now, knowing that you may be the next mayor of Somerville in some people's minds?
How's my heart, metaphorically or physically?
Metaphorically.
Okay, let's see. Do I get to ask that question? Yeah, all right. So, he's painting me in a corner here. What are you putting? My heart is hopeful. I get up every morning. Now, I didn't always do this, but I wake up every morning knowing that it's a gift, and I ask God to direct my path and fill my heart with hope and knowledge of His will for me. And I fail miserably, but I keep trying, not miserably necessarily, but I try. I'm not perfect, but the point is I keep trying,
Yeah. What knowledge do you have about the future of Hutchinson Square?
Well, I think Hutchinson Square has been an asset now. I mean, I've noticed I play in a tavern called the Homegrown Brew House, which is my kind of like was a boyhood, childhood place. I hung out when it was a pool hall, so I kind of love the spot. But ever since they finished the square, our business has been really good, so that's good. And so with that, we collect more accommodation and hospitality taxes, and that's part of my platform. What I'd like to see is some of that being invested into art infrastructure, whether sometimes, if you're going to have an event, you don't have parking, you can justify building a parking lot. I think right now they did a good job. Hindsight's 2020. I can always be a Monday morning quarterback about things, but I think the town employees did a good job. It looks great, and they keep it up. So I'm pleased about Hutchinson Square.
Hutchinson Square. There's so many new businesses coming in and out of Somerville every day. What is the top business in Somerville in your mind?
What's the top business in Somerville? I would say probably the biggest employer would be the Dorchester District 2, if I were to guess. As far as employers are concerned. Now, businesses in Somerville, I frequent. I don't want to name any because I'll leave one out, and then I will disappoint somebody. But there's a lot. The one business I'll have to give a shout out to, though, is Garen's Pharmacy. Okay, that's my favorite business in Somerville, Garen's Pharmacy.
Between now and November, what else should people know about Fleming Moore?
That that I have a servant's heart, that I was a sexton at a church, and the mayor's job and the sexton's job are similar in that I was on call 24/7, even though I wasn't paid 24 hours a day. But if a fire alarm goes off at 2 o'clock in the morning, somebody's got to be there. The mayor's got to be ready to answer the call and have a spiritual foundation that will help him in times of trouble, because heavy is the crown for the man who wears it, or woman. And there's sometimes when communities in times of natural disasters or tragedies need that kind of compassion and unifying presence.
And I know, let me go back to that quote you said to the Post and Courier just recently. You said this quote, "I'm going to run as an art and culture candidate." Do you feel that if by running on arts and culture that you're probably leaving out something else?
Oh, that was, of course, but that was one of the gifts I was going to bring, that I would like to bring to council, and that was way back in May, and I'd been already discussing that on Facebook, and I think that narrative is kind of won out. So,
what can you discuss here on Quintin's Close-Ups?
Well, I'd say, for example, I was talking about the need to fund nonprofits, and every nonprofit that asked for money this year got everything they asked for, which was good.
What did they ask for?
Money, funding for their nonprofits. Any nonprofit that can attract tourism to the area qualifies for hospitality and accommodation tax grants.
Do you qualify for mayor?
Do I qualify for mayor? Well, absolutely. I put my name on the ballot, and so yes.
What would you do on day one if you were to be elected mayor of the town of Somerville?
On day one, I would try to meet with every council member I could. I think the first step forward from there would be to organize the council mayor retreat so that we could get to know one another. I have a kind of an idea of what I'd like to do with that. And when I was on vestry at St. Paul's Church in Somerville, we went out to Camp St. Christopher and did some exercises that were required teamwork. It also, being on vestry, we took a DISC personality test which highlighted everybody's strengths and weaknesses. So I think the first thing I would do the first day would be reach out to Walter Bailey, whom I've known since I was born, since our families go way back. I would reach out to Mayor Johnson and thank him for his service, and would call whoever else would be elected. Right now we don't know who all is running in all those districts.
And you talk about strengths and weaknesses. That is, what is your strength and weakness when it comes to politics?
My strength, I would say, one of them is perseverance, and I kind of consider some of these gifts. I have an analytical mind. I have a degree in mathematics, which I have problem-solving skills. I don't know if you remember Algebra 2, Quintin, and you had to define the variables, solve the equation.
Right.
Well, you have to be able to know what the variables are and balance the equation, and so in that aspect, that's a strength. Also, I do have a servant's heart, and I realize the role of the mayor. Some of my weaknesses is that sometimes my passion or my perceived injustice perpetrated upon other people brings out the worst in me, as far as not being able to speak the truth with love. That's one thing I want to work on, is speaking the truth with love, because sometimes when we speak the truth and it comes across as an anger or bitter or too emotional or passionate, it loses its effect and people miss it.
Fleming Moore, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you, Quintin.
Yes, sir. Likewise. Yes, sir.